everyone, it's championship week. Welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast for our weekly waiver wire episode. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere, as always, and I've received a bunch of questions on Twitter and an email as to who won our big matchup. Let's just say Tags had Todd Gurley and I had Leonard Fournette. And I still won! I'm just kidding. Tags absolutely whooped me. Tags, how's that feel, man?
It feels pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I tried pulling out of this one because we didn't ever set an official bet as to what the loser would have to do with this matchup. So I was like, hey, can we just use this so that I can get out of the combine? And Bobby responded with nice try, Tags. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I'm still
That's not an
pouting.
option. Yeah. I mean, people have asked, like, does that mean that the combine doesn't have to happen anymore for Tags? No, that's not what it is. That's still our bet. But I might lose that bet too. Like, Sammy Watkins did not have a good week. If Amari Cooper comes back and has a good game, I'm going to lose both of them. I don't like this.
That's what I'm rooting for, man. Like, seriously, I don't want to do this combine. I know I'm not in physical shape. I went to the gym this weekend, and I swear to God, I tweaked something with my leg and my hip where they meet, and I'm limping around the house today, so it's not ideal. It's far from ideal from my 30, how old am I now? I kind of forget, 35. Yeah, 35-year-old body. It just doesn't hold up as well as it used to.
Apparently, you need to just go lay down in your Lisa mattress, because I was talking about last week how somebody wrote in and said that they had sciatica. They got a Lisa mattress and it was gone within a week and it hasn't come back. So I think you just need to take a nap there. You'll be fine, man.
I wish I could take a nap. Unfortunately, this is the last week that I have to write the primer. I shouldn't even say unfortunately. I've enjoyed doing it, but at the same time, I am so ready for a break, man. Week 17.
Do you know,
every
single one of our listeners, however many listeners we have, every single one of them would gladly trade places with you. Whatever their job is, I bet they would much rather be writing 25,000 words about fantasy football, dude.
I know it's probably true, and that's why I say that I don't say unfortunately. I obviously chose to do that, but I do want to say thank you to you guys, and I wanted to single out. I get a lot of emails, and Matt, if you're listening, Matt S, if you're listening, just want to say congrats on that playoff, man. It was a cool story he shared with me through email, saying that I don't want to get into the whole thing, but Matt, I just want to say I read it, and it was an awesome email to receive. And good luck in the championship this week, man.
Yeah, we've got so many tweets and emails of people thanking us for helping us get them to their title game. The decision is up to you whether or not to listen to us. And sometimes, as you know, it doesn't work out so well, but like you guys did it. And it's really the best part of the job, like getting to help you all win. Hopefully we can lend a hand this week with the title game waiver wire show. But first, we got to talk about injuries. And of course, Tags, it starts with Antonio Brown.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. When he left that game, it looked like it was going to be maybe a broken leg. It was down there. It didn't look very pretty when it happened. But fortunately for him, it is just a partially torn calf muscle. Now, this doesn't help fantasy owners because he is going to be out for the remainder of the regular season. They're saying he's going to be back for the playoffs. So if you own Antonio Brown and it's a non-keeper league, you can drop him. That's where we're at.
Hey, you guys can tweet at Mike Tagliere NFL on Twitter and let him know who you think would win a race between Antonio Brown with a partially torn calf running backwards or Mike.
I'm gonna guess that Antonio Brown would still win that. I am not a fast individual by any means. I've never even run the 40, so I can't tell you what I'm even expected to run it in. So there was another big injury from that game, though, Bobby, that it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit because I think people are still wondering about what happened, and that's Rex Burkhead. He went down with what seemed to be a knee injury that was potentially serious. They ruled him out immediately, which is never a good sign. And now they're saying that he doesn't have a torn ACL, but that he is expected to miss some time. So the question that has to be asked right now is Mike Gillislee going to come and hijack this fantasy season? Is he like a guy that people should run out and grab off their waiver wire if he's still out there?
I was thinking that, man, and I thought about it for 2 minutes this morning. And no. You cannot start Mike Gillislee in your championship. Okay, I understand there is a chance he gets multiple touchdowns, but it's probably less than 2%, right? So, yeah. I mean, I understand that's a better chance than anybody else, but you don't just go out and start someone who's been inactive for a month when they've still got Deion Lewis, and who knows, maybe Bill Belichick's going to go out and sign somebody that hasn't played in 3 years that everyone forgot about, and somehow he gets 25 carries. It's the Patriots. You don't start somebody that they just pull off inactive. I mean, I understand that there are goal line carries available and everything, and Gillislee, look, I think he's still a good football player, but I don't think he's going to be a big part of this offensive plan this weekend.
Yeah, he's been out since week 8. That was the last time that he played a football game. So it's worrisome, but at the same time, this is also his former team. They're playing against the Bills this week, a team that has allowed 14 rushing touchdowns in their last 7 games. Like that's something that people dream of. So obviously Deion Lewis is going to be if you have Deion Lewis, congratulations, because you have yourself what looks to be a low-end RB1 for this week with no Burkhead. And the other injuries, Bobby, I think we should probably touch on are Devontae Adams and Marquise Lee. So Devontae Adams, this is the biggest one for me because he's someone that people were relying on. They rode him into the fantasy playoffs. He did well for them. He even did well before he was knocked out last week. But this is a player who had a bad concussion that required him to go to the hospital earlier in the season, came back, played the next week. Now he's got another one, and the Packers play again on a short week. They are playing on Saturday this week against the Vikings at home. So I don't know if he's going to get cleared in time with a guy that's had multiple concussions in the past 2 months. What do owners do with Devontae Adams? Do they pick up Geronimo Allison?
You could. I wouldn't be surprised if Allison gets more targets than Jordy Nelson this week. Nelson was non-existent even with Aaron Rodgers back, and I do not think Devontae Adams is playing. I'm going to grade Allison right now. I just did my rankings for the rest of the season, which, as you know, are the same as Week 16 rankings, since that is the rest of the season. And I have Allison right now, wide receiver number 42, so he's in play for the flex, in my opinion, man. This Devontae Adams hit, what a cheap shot. Like, this is infuriating.
Yep.
When we're watching football and this stuff just keeps happening, it's infuriating. Like, stop doing this to your game.
Yeah, no, and like Thomas Davis, and I know that they showed him afterwards and he was on the bench, and he had his head down, like he felt bad about it. And then later in the game, I saw him go over to Aaron Rodgers and apologize to him. And Aaron was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. And, it's one of those things.
He felt bad because he got caught. It's like when your little kid lies and he's mad that he's in trouble, so he feels bad about it. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
That's what happened.
Wow. Well, what timing? So as we were talking about this, I kid you not, Ian Rappaport just tweeted, the NFL is suspending Thomas Davis 2 games for his hit on Devontae Adams Sunday. So he's getting a 2-game suspension for it.
So he'll be back for the playoffs.
Well, are the Panthers going to make the playoffs? Is that like guaranteed at this point?
No, it's not guaranteed. I mean, the Packers could still make the playoffs, which means if Devontae Adams is ready to go, if he's cleared, like, he's definitely going to play, right? I mean, it's a long shot, but there are like 5 or 6 teams still up for that number 2 wild card spot. So hold on. Actually, I think the Panthers are a lock, aren't they? Don't they have a bunch of wins?
I just pulled it up. So they have not clinched it just yet. They're sitting there at 10-4. They're in the playoffs as of right now. If they win one more game, they clinch. But the thing is, tonight, what's important in regards to Aaron Rodgers and the whole Packers game, because we're recording this on Monday afternoon, and the Packers, the only way that they're still alive in the playoff hunt is if the Falcons lose tonight against the Bucs, which it seems very unlikely, but it's possible. But if you own Aaron Rodgers, you are rooting for the Tampa Bay Bucs tonight.
Yep, absolutely. And even if you're just a football fan and you want to see Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs, I think you're rooting for the Tampa Bay Bucs tonight.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. I just want to see Aaron Rodgers because I have him in one of my fantasy leagues that I am. Otherwise, I'm going to be forced to start, I think, Marcus Mariota, which is something I really don't want to do.
Don't do it.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
Pick up somebody else instead of Mariota. Yeah. Here's the thing about the Davis suspension is, like, it's 2 games right now, but based on the precedent they've set with these dirty hits, like, Rob Gronkowski's hit was much worse than that. This one was during the play. I don't know if it was certain that he was headhunting or anything. Like, it might have just been an instinct thing. Gronk deliberately tried to hurt somebody who was laying on the ground after the play was over, and they gave him 1 game. I guarantee Davis is going to be able to, appeal this game. He's going to get 1 game, and then they're going to come out in the offseason and say, this stuff's not going to fly anymore. You do this, you're out 4 games or something like that.
Yeah, those crackback blocks, those are really tough ones. Like, those, whenever you do that, like, it was something that was cool to see on the highlight reels as a kid. You just grow up watching those, like the biggest hits in the NFL. But then as the older you get, the more you're just like, man, those are nasty hits. Like, those are the hits that, again, when I was younger, I was like, oh, I wanted to see them over and over. But the older you get, you're just like, there's nothing good that comes out of those hits. Like, there's just not. So I feel bad for...
I don't know if it's the older you get, because I was talking to my grandpa, who's a big Packers fan, And so, like, I thought he would be devastated by the Davante Adams hit and everything. He's like, oh, man, that was a great hit. Back in my day, that was legal. We used to do a lot more than that. You know what I mean? Like, he's like 85 years old, and he thinks that's a great hit. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just our generation.
Honestly, no. Someone brought up a good point. I don't remember who it was on Twitter, but someone brought it up that the NFL should get rid of helmets again. And it would eliminate a lot of the issues. Like if you go back to the days when they played in the leatherhead, like the leatherheads that they called them, people didn't get nearly as many concussions as they do nowadays. Right. Nowadays they use it as a weapon. You're taught kind of like that's what you're supposed to do. Lead with your head. I know it's lead with your shoulder, but that's kind of what they do. So if you were to eliminate the helmet, it might eliminate a lot of these problems, which is kind of crazy when you first think about it. But the more you kind of like process it, the more you're like, yeah, that would actually make sense.
I don't know, man. That sounds really risky to me, but you know, because these guys still have the instinct of leading with their heads. Like, they're going to lead with their head with no helmet on now?
Well, hold on a second. So Thomas Davis wouldn't have done that hit had he not been wearing a helmet. Like, if they were each not wearing helmets, he wouldn't have gone head to head with Davante Adams. He wouldn't have done that at all. He would have went more towards his body.
What I'm saying is, like, it's ingrained in his mind. Like, if he's out there with that mentality and he just goes with his instinct for 1 second, he's crushing a guy in the head with no helmet on, man.
Well, that's the thing, is they have no worries with that helmet on. You take that off, it's like the natural instinct for, as a human being, is to protect your head. Like, I don't like getting hit in my head at all. Like, even if it's my son, my 11-month-old son, and he goes to smack my head, I don't like it. Like, getting hit in the head doesn't feel good. Like, when you have a helmet on, you obviously don't feel that, so.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my worst pet peeves. I don't know if this qualifies as a pet peeve, but just like bumping your head. That's the worst thing in the world. Like, I would almost rather get kicked in the nuts than bump my head on something. I hate that. I wish that was not a part of life, man.
For sure.
You know, I also wish it wasn't a part of life that Marquise Lee would roll his ankle in like the first quarter of a fantasy football playoff game. But he did, and I think he might be out this week. That's really not going to change much for Blake Bortles because he can do whatever he wants with Jaden Mickens and Dede Westbrook and Keelan Cole, apparently. But for Marquise Lee owners, even if he does play, I don't think I'm going to recommend starting him this week.
Yeah, he's not going to play. They said that they've sent him for x-rays and all that stuff, and it came back negative, but that he is going to miss some time, so he's definitely not playing this week. So Dede Westbrook, Keelan Cole, these are guys that we're going to talk about today in the show, guys that are available on the waiver wire in over 60% of the leagues for whatever reason.
You know, a few other injuries I want to touch on really quick, and these are important ones. Tyron Smith left with a knee injury, and I know Zeke's coming back. I mean, it's not like you're going to bench Zeke or anything like that, but I think him and Dak especially take a big blow. I think a lot of people are going to think, hey, maybe I can start Dak now that Zeke is back, because we know who he is with Zeke back. But with Tyron Smith, if he misses this game, there's no way I'm playing Dak Prescott.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely worrisome, and I don't know if Tyron Smith is for sure going to miss, but going up against a Seahawks team, the Cowboys will be at home. I expect that to be a very, very, very run-heavy game script for them, where I don't think they want to trust Dak Prescott to throw the ball right now. He just doesn't look right, and the thing is like, can he have fooled me for a year and a half? Yeah, I suppose. I mean, stranger things have happened, but I'm not ready to give up on him. But at the same time, he's also not a core. He's just not in stride. He's not targeting Dez Bryant nearly as much as he should. Like, it was maddening watching that game. I know they won, but it was ugly fashion.
Who knows what's going on with him? We'll probably find out that he's getting some surgery in the offseason. He's been playing through it. That's just like what happens with quarterbacks. You don't just get that much worse all of a sudden, in my opinion. The other one, Donald Penn, left the game with a foot injury. I think Oakland looked pretty shaky afterward. I don't think you're going to start David Carr anyway. David Carr, Derek Carr, same guy, right? I don't think you're going to start. I don't think you're going to start Carr anyway. But now I'm definitely not starting Carr.
Yeah, it definitely hurts. It also hurts the fact that they're playing against the Eagles in Philadelphia on Monday night. They're doing that against an Eagles team. Like, the thing is that offense isn't going to be able to move the ball against Philly. That's just not going to happen. So I don't think it changes too much for me, because again, that's a game where we didn't expect many fireworks out of it anyways. And if you own Amari Cooper and you're like hoping to get him back for this game, I mean, they play on Monday night, and it's going to be really worrisome throughout the week. You're not going to know if he's going to play. It's God, these games always tend to happen at the exact same time that like these injuries take place, like a big name injury. Like, remember Antonio Brown when he was playing on that Monday night game and he had that foot injury where they said he was legitimately questionable. They didn't know if he was going to play. It seems like every single week there's an injury that goes into Monday Night Football where we just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right about that, Tags. The last one, Leonard Fournette, he missed the game. I don't think he's really that injured, but you heard the coach talk about it, and he's just like, well, at this point in the season, I don't really see a reason to risk it. I mean, we can whoop all these teams anyway without Leonard Fournette, so we might as well and just keep him healthy. Like, is he going to play this week?
This is funny because I actually thought about that. I'm like, well, if the Jags win, are they going to play Fournette? And I was watching NFL Network that morning, and Ian Rappaport came on and said that Leonard Fournette will be back on the field next week. This is a 1 week thing. He will be back in the lineup next week. He was very adamant about it. So apparently he's got connections with the Jags, and he found out that he'll be back next week. But the thing is, we mentioned on the show last week is that with Fournette out, it was that, we were going to feel more and more comfortable starting Blake Bortles. And that's kind of how we feel this week against the 49ers, right? I mean, Chris Ivory was someone that so many people went gaga over once Fournette was announced out. I tweeted out that he was in my RB3 range. He was kind of like a DeMarco Murray. I didn't feel like it was a great matchup. I received a lot of feedback from that. People telling me that the Houston matchup is good. What the heck am I talking about? And it was just a weird thing because apparently they heard from someone else that it was a good matchup. It wasn't. Houston has been a tough matchup for running backs. They've been a defense that you can throw on nonstop. So this week against the 49ers, it's another team that you could just throw on nonstop. So I don't know, even if Fournette does play, I don't think he's going to get 20, 25 carries as he normally would. I think it's another week that they're going to rely on Bortles to do what he does and keep his groove going, because you don't want to take that away from him. While he's playing as hot as he is, you want to keep that going. And the only way to do that is to continue playing him the way you have. So, yeah, I mean, I think Fournette's going to play. It's just a matter of how many touches is he going to get in this game.
I think it's better for Blake Bortles if Fournette plays. If Fournette plays, they're stacking the box 70% of the time, right?
Well, for the past, I think, month and a half, it's been roughly 60% of the time where he's faced 8+ man fronts, which is easily the most in the NFL. So teams are saying, Blake Bortles beat us. I don't know at what point defenses say, okay, maybe we have to worry about Blake Bortles, but it hasn't happened yet.
Did you see Jadeveon Clowney after they lost by like 40 points to the Jags for the second straight time this season?
I did.
Jadeveon Clowney was like, man, Bortles is terrible or whatever. That is so stupid.
Yeah, they said, has he improved? He said, no, he's still bad. So, I mean, he just lit up your defense, so I don't think you should be saying much right now. I mean, even us in the fantasy community, we are relying on Blake Bortles to win us fantasy matchups. That just tells you we've come around, and we were some of the people who were most against Blake Bortles for most of the season, but I've come around saying that he's playing as good as I've ever seen him play. And he's doing it with limited weapons.
That's not true, man. I loved him at the beginning of the season above the rest of the consensus rankings, and everyone made fun of me. And eventually I just said, okay, you guys are right. And as soon as I did that, that's when he started dominating.
Well, no, it came down to, like, he did look bad at the beginning of the year. He didn't look good at all. And I don't know what happened. Something just clicked with him where he was always a guy that you can never rely on to make the easy throws. And for whatever reason, like, he only had one game with more than one touchdown over the first 10 weeks. But then you go over the last 3 weeks and he's looking like a different quarterback. I think something changed in there. And maybe it's the fact that defenses with Leonard Fournette, they're starting to load the box more and more. Maybe it's D.D. Westbrook stretching the field. Maybe it's Keelan Cole stretching the field.
Offensive line.
Yeah, well, the offensive line has played better, but they haven't been great this year. So I don't want to say that they're the only reason, but whatever the case is, Blake Bortles is definitely somebody that you can trust. Even, I know we're going to talk about in the sit show our next show, but Blake Bortles is somebody you could trust in week 16.
Yep, I definitely agree. Tags, let's get right into the waiver wire here. It took a little longer than usual, so sorry about that, guys. Bortles is not really available in that many leagues. You can get him in 45% of your leagues, and if you have him, you're probably in the championship right now just based on how he's been playing. Start him again against the 49ers. Someone you can pick up, though, that I'm actually a believer in is Nick Foles. I mentioned him last week, and I understand he's probably not going to get 4 touchdowns on 200 yards again, but it's against Oakland. It's another really nice matchup. I think he's the top pickup of the week at quarterback. What do you think, Tags?
It's close. I would say that Joe Flacco is probably the safest one for me at quarterback, and I say that just because the Ravens are never in a position to just sit on the ball like the Eagles are going to be against the Raiders, most likely. Joe Flacco playing against a Colts defense that has now allowed, I want to say it is 10 of 14 quarterbacks to finish his top 15 options against them. So it's such a good matchup. It's hard for me to pass it up. That game is in Baltimore. It's on Saturday, so we should have a good idea of the weather. But I think Joe Flacco and Nick Foles are clearly the number 1 and number 2 on the waiver wire for quarterback. Eli Manning, some people are going to wonder about that, but I'm not buying in. I don't think that he goes into Arizona.
I mean, maybe if he gets three of his wide receivers to run for 70-yard touchdowns again. I mean, those were just little dump-off passes he got 200 yards on that garbage. So Eli Manning is not back or anything like that. He just had one of those lucky Jared Goff type weeks.
Yeah. You're still picking on Jared Goff. But Eli Manning did throw the ball 57 times. So don't overlook that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Oh, man, are you serious?
Yeah, that's not going to happen this week against Arizona. That game is going to be one where you're going to see more rushing attempts out of there. It's going to be a lower scoring game in Arizona. It's just, it's not a matchup where you want to target Eli Manning. And Jimmy Garoppolo, as good as he's been, you're not playing him against Jacksonville. So the only really 2 quarterbacks in the waiver wire that you really even want to consider this week are Flacco and Nick Foles.
Here's the thing about Flacco, though. How many times has he been a QB1 all season, Tags?
One.
Just one time all season. He couldn't even do it against Cleveland last week. Indianapolis, I know they've got people hurt, but their secondary is still a little bit better than Cleveland's, I think.
No. Well, I mean, the thing is, against Cleveland, you could say that about Flacco, but at the same time, it really came down to the rushing, the team running the ball on them. I want to say they scored 3 rushing touchdowns in that game, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think they scored 3 rushing touchdowns, limiting Flacco. But if you look at Flacco over the time, ever since he said, let's change the offense, let's open it up a little bit, he has scored, let's see, his totals over the last 3 games have been 18.6 or 18.7, 16.8, and 21.8. Their matchup against Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, again, not 3 defenses that you're scared of, but the Colts are another defense that you're not really scared of. So I just feel like it's a matchup that he has a high floor, whereas Nick Foles, again, he's in that same territory. I think I'd slightly prefer Flacco, though.
I think Flacco's safer than Foles. I think you're right about that. Somebody else that I think is pretty safe is Tyrod Taylor. Like, he put up 23 points last week against the Dolphins. They're going to be playing catch-up against the Patriots. He's probably going to get a lot of rushing yards while they're sitting back in pass coverage. I like Tyrod Taylor a little bit this week. I don't like him as much as the other 2, but, if Foles is gone in your league somehow and Flacco's gone in your league, I think Tyrod is not a bad start. He's probably my QB 15, 16 this week.
The Patriots are so hurt on their defense. It's tough to see them continuing to play well. The last time he did play them was just 3 weeks ago. He played against them in Buffalo. He only completed 9 of 18 passes for 65 yards. He didn't throw a touchdown. He intercepted. He was hurt in that game. He did rush for 32 yards. That's something that he can do against the Patriots because they play a lot of man coverage. And again, we've talked about in the show before is when you play man coverage, your backs are turned to the quarterback a lot of the time. You're chasing down a wide receiver. The issue with Tyrod for me, the reason I can't fully get on board with trusting him is because he has nobody to throw to. Like Kelvin Benjamin came out and said that he's playing on a knee that's going to require surgery after the season to repair a torn meniscus, but he's going to continue to play through it for whatever reason. This sounds stupid. When you're playing for a team that doesn't even utilize you in the passing game, like why? Zay Jones, I don't even want to talk about Zay Jones.
Because they have a chance to make the playoffs, man.
But that's the thing. He's not even involved. It's not like you're trying. Let's be real about this. The Buffalo Bills are not going to do anything in the playoffs. They're not like that. They're not going anywhere. And I know anything can happen on any Sunday. That same thing is not going to happen like 3 Sundays in a row. So no, I'm not buying the Bills as a Super Bowl contender. But I guess I get it. You're a couple weeks away, play through it. But again, it's about his passing options. Like he just doesn't have any guys to throw to. Charles Clay looked a little bit better last week, but I think you're right in the fact that if someone's like missing out on Nick Foles and Joe Flacco's not available and you're like searching for a last ditch effort, Tyrod Taylor at least comes with a floor due to his rushing ability. So I don't think it's the worst play, but I think that you and I both touched on it is that we'd prefer Foles or Flacco.
It's a desperate option. Yeah, it's desperate. Tags, we're going to move on to the other positions here in a second, but first a word from Lisa Mattress, one of the sponsors of today's show. I talked to you all last week, as I mentioned earlier in the show, about how we got someone who wrote in saying, hey, I have one of these Lisa mattresses. And I had sciatica before I got it. It was gone within a week. It's like one of those hip conditions where, your hip is just bothering you all the time. And I've had a pretty similar experience. Like I just play a lot of sports and I'm pretty sore when I wake up in the morning. It doesn't happen in this bed. Like, it really is the most comfortable bed I've ever slept on. Anyone who's ever tried this mattress will tell you the same exact thing. And America agrees overall because Leesa was the fastest growing e-retailer in 2015 because everyone found out how comfortable these mattresses were, told their friends, told their family, and you can try it for yourself. I don't see why you wouldn't try it. If you're looking for a mattress, just try this. You get 100 nights risk-free with free shipping. And we've got a promo code for you if you want to try it. Save $100 off your mattress order. Just go to leesa.com/fantasypros. That's LEESA.com/fantasypros for $100 off your mattress order. Seriously, guys, you are going to love it. This is a great mattress. Tags at running back going into the championship week, we actually have some decent pickup options. Kerwin Williams is sitting out there. He's a starter in the NFL. And Peyton Barber, we're going to see tonight what the Bucs really plan to do with him, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he leads the team in carries again, gets the red zone carries. I think that Kerwin Williams and Peyton Barber are two nice pickups, and maybe Wayne Gallman too.
What's crazy to me is that I don't want Kerwin Williams very much, and I say that because he's a guy that if the Cardinals fall behind, he's basically obsolete. We saw that happen this past week. Like, he's not a very well-rounded running back, and I don't like playing those running backs. It just feels very boring to me. It's almost like a Frank Gore, and I understand if they're in a decent matchup, you can get 60 to 80 yards out of them. That's fine. Against the Giants, it's not like it's a bad matchup at all, but it's also not one that, like, the Giants are a weaker secondary than they are one that you can run on. So Kerwin Williams is number 3 on my list. Peyton Barber's the wild card. If he gets the start tonight, if he plays well against the Falcons, I'm moving him up my rankings. But he does play the Panthers this week, who are apparently going to be without Thomas Davis, which is an upgrade, but it's still not a great matchup. My number 1 at running back, though, you didn't even mention him, is Buck Allen, and it's someone that I talked about dropping a few weeks back, but he's someone who has passed Danny Woodhead on the depth chart. Danny Woodhead's basically doesn't exist, and going in to play the Colts, or hosting the Colts, I should say, the Colts have allowed plenty of rushing yards. Over the last 2 weeks combined, the Colts have allowed almost 400 yards on the ground. 196 to the Broncos in week 15, 192 to the Bills in week 14. So that's
crazy.
Yeah, there's likely to be enough carries to go around between both Alex Collins and Buck Allen. So if you're looking for like a desperation option who's available on most waiver wires, I think Buck Allen is probably the one that I think he might have the most upside in terms of matchups because, again, Barber against the Panthers, who have been dominant against the run. Kerwin Williams, it's just a very boring option. And Wayne Gallman, you mentioned him. He's someone that going against the Arizona Cardinals, which is not a matchup you'd want to target. So that's why for me, it's so ugly. I hate looking at this waiver wire this week.
I completely disagree with you here, Tags. I have him as my number 7 running back this week. Like, I'm looking at it. He got 7 carries, 3 carries, 5 carries, 7 carries, 6 carries. He had a bunch of carries this game, yeah, but it was at the end of the game when the game was already decided, right? I just can't see him getting more than 6 or 7 carries again this week unless it's a blowout. And, it could be a blowout against the Colts, but I don't want to bank on that in the championship. And most likely, you guys are listening, have 3 really good running backs. You don't need to pick up one of these guys. But, if you do, I want somebody who's a little bit safer. I'd rather even have Tion Green.
No, I mean, that's my point is it's all about the matchup here and the fact. So again, the Colts, 42 carries. Week 15, 42 carries by the Bills in week 14. So 42 carries for each team in the last 2 weeks. Before that, 24 carries, 25 carries, 27. So you kind of look at it and you're just like, okay, do we see any chance that the Colts put up points in the Ravens defense in Baltimore? No. This game script is going to have the Ravens running the ball 30 times. And unless you're projecting Alex Collins for 25 carries, Buck Allen's going to get in the double digits. Like, that's why I think it's going to happen. Again, this offense opened up. He can contribute a little bit in the passing game if they need him to, but he outran Alex Collins last week, which is why that's why he got 13 carries in that game against the Browns. The week before that, he scored 2 touchdowns against the Steelers. So again, this is a guy that I was completely against, and I'm not excited about any of these guys in the waiver wire. I don't think any of them are going to help you win a championship. I think Tion Green is an interesting one because Theo Riddick might be out But again, that's another matchup that can be bad against the Bengals if Vontaze Burfict comes back.
It's a perfect matchup. They have 2 healthy linebackers. They were sitting in nickel coverage the entire second half because everybody was hurt.
Oh, right.
I mean, they're talking about putting John Ross on defense.
And that's what I'm saying. Well, they were talking about using him as a cornerback before they put him on IR. That was stupid. But I don't. The Bengals coaching staff is idiotic. We don't need to spend time on that. But Tion Green, again, if Vontaze Burfict is out, I think that he's somewhat of an option, but you also have to go on the flip side of that, though. You could talk about the Bengals linebacking core, but you could also talk about the Lions offensive line, which is likely to be down 3 starters this week.
Yeah, that's a good call. Like Tag said, I mean, I can't actually recommend starting any of these guys. I will not have any in my top 24 running backs. But if you need someone, I guess the guy is Kerwin Williams, unless Peyton Barber plays. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. And honestly, like the running backs,
unless Peyton Barber's the starter. Sorry.
Yeah, and if you're looking for someone to fill a flex, like I said, let's pretend that you had an injury and Antonio Brown comes out, you have to slide someone into wide receiver. There's plenty more wide receivers on the wire this week. Where if you really want a player, I would shoot for the stars. I would not instead of Kerwin Williams getting you your 40 to 60 yards. Go with someone the upside. We're going to talk about some wide receivers here who I think that these are potential league winners. These are guys who can, they can go for 100 yards and a touchdown. I think, and we've seen it with a couple of these guys already. So I'm more on the bandwagon for wide receivers this week.
Before we get there, I want to ask you, who are some of these high upside running backs? Like Tariq Cohen's still sitting out there in 55% of leagues. He could have a huge game every now and then, right? J.D. McKissick can break some big runs. Aaron Jones, we know he can break some big runs. Would you rather start one of those guys than a Tion Green?
I would rather play Tariq Cohen, I think. Yeah, I would rather play him against the Browns. I know that the Bears are going to want to come out and run the ball a ton while at home. I don't think they're going to put the ball in Trubisky's hands after throwing 3 interceptions against the Lions on Saturday. So, yeah, I would say Tariq Cohen is someone that I would rather play. He's played at least 35% of the snaps in the last 3 games, I want to say. So he's been seeing a more and more consistent role in the offense. So, yeah, I would definitely say him.
What about Corey Clement or Matt Forte? Matt Forte's had a few big games this season. I wouldn't feel great about starting him, but, I think I like what you're saying about the upside thing. Like maybe Matt Forte gets 2 points, but maybe he gets 20.
Him, I worry about them shutting him down. I was higher than most on Bilal Powell this past week, and it was because Matt Forte wasn't practicing, and I honestly felt like he might not even play. And then he did play, but he wasn't very effective. Bilal Powell was the one who actually scored the touchdown. So I just can't have faith in a Bryce Petty-led offense for Matt Forte. I just don't think he'll be in scoring opportunities very often. So As for Corey Clement, I mean, that backfield is such a mess. And I know we talked about it last week and how I was hesitant to trust Jay Ajayi or LeGarrette Blount or any of those guys just because Doug Peterson just doesn't want them to he doesn't want one guy to have the show. And he does. And I think that might be a problem to some extent because I don't think he knows how to properly use them because I don't know why they went out and traded for Jay Ajayi. They already had the pieces in place for guys that could handle the jobs that they needed them to do, but what do I know?
They just wrapped up a playoff bye, man. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah, I actually do think this makes sense. I mean, it sucks for fantasy football, but you keep the guys fresh. They're all pretty similar in talent, unless you've got like a Le'Veon Bell or something like that, or Kenyon Drake. Dare I use his name in the same conversation as Bell? He's incredible, by the way. But, I think it makes sense to use the fresh legs. We saw the Giants used to do it way back when they had Brandon Jacobs and Tiki Barber, and they had somebody else too. And it seemed to work. I thought it was going to catch on in the NFL, but it never really seemed to.
It does work in certain things, but I think 2 running backs is all you need. You need a strong 1-2 down back that can contribute a little bit on third down, and then you need a third down back who can play a little bit of first and second down. I don't think you need all 3 of these guys. I think it stops players from getting into a rhythm, and I talked about it earlier in the season with Joe Mixon. If you remember, Mixon started out really bad. Like he could not get in a rhythm. It's like they'd put him in for a play, they'd pull him out, they put in Bernard, then they put in Hill. As a football player, as a sports player in general, if you get on a roll, you need to keep going. But instead, the Bengals coaching staff kept pulling him out. When you started to see Joe Mixon really shine was when they started giving him 15 to 20 carries per game. They were leaving him in there for multiple series. That allows a player to get into a groove. I'm not blaming Jay Ajayi. I'm not blaming LeGarrette Blount. I'm not blaming Corey Clement for their struggles if they do struggle, because it's hard to get into a rhythm with your offensive line when you're all 3 different style runners. So again, It's not how I would run my team. I don't think they have the personnel to do it that way either. But I don't think this running game is going to carry them through to the playoffs. And by the way, the Raiders, ever since firing their defensive coordinator, they've only allowed 1 touchdown in the last 3 games. And granted,
didn't realize that.
Yeah, and granted, one of those games was against Geno Smith, but the other 2 were against Dak Prescott and Alex Smith. So it wasn't like they were playing like garbage football players. So, I mean, the Raiders defense seems to have woken up a little bit with the firing of their defensive coordinator, though they have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns. Or 5 rushing touchdowns if you include Dax in the last 3 weeks.
3 other guys I want to ask about really quick before we move on, Tags. Let's say Bilal Powell, Jonathan Stewart, and Orleans Darkwa are all sitting on your waiver wire. They're owned in about 45 to 50% of leagues. Who would be your number 1, or would it be a guy who's on the waiver wire in most leagues?
I'd say Jonathan Stewart was probably the one that I would want. The Bucs, they're going to be playing tonight. You're going to see them. I don't think Gerald McCoy is going to play. And if he does play, he's playing through a torn biceps, which just sounds awful. Like, why would you do that? The Bucs have been struggling against the run as of late, too. And I'm guessing that's a product of McCoy not being himself. So Jonathan Stewart is someone that I hate owning. Like, I really never want to play him. But at home against the Bucs this week, I definitely could see that. I could see him having one of those 2 touchdown games that he has. So I'd rather have him. Though I do think that Bilal Powell can be considered like a RB3 flex type player as well.
Bilal Powell has the most upside of anyone we've talked about from week to week. I do think Stewart has a very good chance at a touchdown, though, and that's really what we're going for, right? Also, Mike Davis against Dallas. Mike Davis is out there in 52% of leagues right now.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how Seattle comes out. That was an embarrassment. Like, watching that game, I watched the entire game, and it was an embarrassment to Seahawks fans. Like,
so funny
to have to sit and watch through that game. Like, what happened? Like, I knew it was a divisional game, and I knew that Russell Wilson had struggled against the Rams. I had talked about it with the producer of our show, and I said, and he's like, see, I told you, he's like, I was worried about him. I'm like, nobody could have predicted this. Like, you watch that game, Russell Wilson was off his game. The offensive line couldn't block anybody. Aaron Donald was wreaking havoc in the backfield. Their run game, they never had a chance to get it going. Their defense, what the hell happened? Like, Todd Gurley, I mean, I'm pretty sure
they don't have a defense. Everybody's hurt, man. All the stars that are still healthy, they're not healthy. They're playing like the broken legs and stuff.
I mean, that's the thing is, like, you go back to the Eagles game, and that's why I figured Jay Ajayi was going to be a solid start against them. 9 carries, 35 yards. Fournette, 24 carries, 101 yards. I mean, it was a very volume-esque game. It wasn't like a massive performance. But to see Todd Gurley score 4 touchdowns, like, the guy was basically just untouched half the time. It was ridiculous. And again, that game was in Seattle. They were embarrassed. So I'm really curious to see how they come out in Dallas. That game should be fun to watch because I would assume that Pete Carroll is not going to take it easy on them this week and saying we need to go in and need a confidence booster against Dallas. And they're just the team that you could do it against. So yeah, I could see Mike Davis having a bigger game after a letdown because he's someone that should have had a much bigger game against the Rams.
It was a major letdown. I thought Mike Davis was going to have a great week. So I'm sorry I was wrong about that, guys. This is a do or die game for both of these teams. Like, the Cowboys still have a chance to make the playoffs if they win this game. Seahawks still have a chance, but if either of them loses, they're almost certainly out. So it's going to be a great game to watch. I'm looking forward to it. All right, Tags, we're going to get to wide receiver and tight end here in just a second. Maybe we'll have some time to do some drops. But I want to take a moment to talk about SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app right now. It is the best thing. I got an email last week that I was talking to y'all about on the podcast where somebody was like, you know, I heard you keep talking about it. I'm kind of immune to all these ad reads and everything like that. But you just kept talking about it. It made sense. I was like, okay, I'll check it out. I've been using this other site for a long time. No reason to change. And he downloaded the SeatGeek app so he could save himself $20. And he was like, why did I not do this years ago? It is so much better than anyone else. And that was my experience too. When I downloaded the SeatGeek app, I never went back to any other site. It's just so much easier to use. I used to always spend so much time searching around on other sites to finally find a decent value. Now that I've got the SeatGeek app on my phone, it's by far the easiest way to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere with just a few taps, can instantly find the best value across multiple ticket sites. And SeatGeek saves you time and money by grading the value of every seat across multiple sites. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed. That way you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket, from sports and concerts to comedy and theater, and it makes a great Christmas present as well. Best of all, our listeners, as I mentioned, get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app now and enter the promo code FANTASYPROS today. That's promo code FANTASYPROS, all one word, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All right, Tag, so wide receiver, and you already mentioned it. It is the two Jags wide receivers, Dede Westbrook, Keelan Cole. That is if Marquise Lee's out. Otherwise, Keelan Cole, I'm not sure I'd start him. But as for now, I've got him as a top 36 wide receiver, man. I mean, he is killing it. He's been even hotter than Dede Westbrook.
He has, as of late, like he's going off. I still think I would rather play Westbrook, but Cole is definitely in that. They're both in this week. They're both going to be ranked inside my top 40 wide receivers. I think they're both startable in standard 12 team leagues. Westbrook, again, he's the guy that we're waiting on that big play to break out. Keelan Cole's the one who's been getting him. He's going to demand some attention. Then we had Jaden Mickens. Like, what the heck happened with that guy? There's going to be some people that are going to go out there and chase his game. They're going to want to pick him up. So I want to mention him. He only played 29.
Don't do it. He's a special teams player.
Yeah, he only played 29 of 70 snaps, so it's not like he was playing a ton of snaps and like he's a full-time player with Marquise Lee out of the lineup. That's not going to happen. So Westbrook and Cole are the ones you want against the 49ers. They don't have the personnel to stop these guys. I think this is the week where Westbrook actually goes off. He's going to be ranked inside my top 30 wide receivers. I do know that. Maybe even top 24, but his target share has been there. I know he was a letdown this past week, but him and Keelan Cole, great ads. It's crazy to think that two of my top 3 wide receiver ads this week are Jacksonville Jaguars players.
Backup Jags players, like third and fourth string Jags players. Fourth and fifth at the start of the season when they had Allen Robinson, and these two have just exploded. I mean, Keelan Cole has 367 yards and 3 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. He's on fire, man. He's getting a ton of air yards, a bunch of targets. He's not even played, more than 65% of snaps, and now if Marquise Lee's out, he's a good play. But yeah, Dede Westbrook, if Marquise Lee is out, Dede Westbrook is a top 24, maybe top 20 wide receiver against the 49ers this week.
Yeah, and I'm totally 100% like on board with the fact that I think Marquise Lee is not going to play this game. I don't think it's in the realm of possibility. So therefore, plan to have Westbrook in your lineup, plan to have Cole in your lineup. And again, Jaden Mickens, I'm not interested in him. Like if there's somebody else that wants to chase that performance, there's other players that I would rather have who are on the waiver wire that you can get before. Like other people would rather take Mickens, but I would much rather have like Mike Wallace, Geronimo Allison, Bird from Carolina, Damiere Byrd. Like he's played really well in the time that he's been on the field. So and then lastly, Kendall Wright is another player that I would rather own over Mickens. And I think everybody owes me an apology. I think you and Brandon both laughed at me. You both laughed at me when I recommended Kendall Wright last week. And
oh, big time. Yeah, I laughed so hard. In fact, I laughed a lot more after the show when you couldn't hear me.
Well, it panned out. And what's funny is like Keelan Cole was someone that I can't remember who was on the show back when I recommended him as a start, saying that he was a start, and he didn't do well that week. He didn't play very well, but ever since then, he's been really good. So I'm gonna say that I gave him the push that he needed into stardom. But in reality, no.
I recommended drafting Keelan Cole, man. He was my Stephon Diggs of this year, and it's turning out all right. He's probably not going to be drafted next year, right? But I think Keelan Cole is exceptionally talented.
No, he's playing very well, and that's the thing is like I'm sure even if you did draft him, you dropped him. Like people weren't going to stick with Keelan Cole as he was playing behind Allen Hurns for a long time.
He wasn't ready. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is Blake Bortles stepping up and playing the way he is. That's what's led to this increase. So now my question to you, Bobby, is if you're looking, let's say Mike Wallace is on the waiver wire. Would you take Mike Wallace over Keelan Cole? Mike Wallace, again, they're playing against the Colts on Saturday.
It's really close for me. It depends on the Marquise Lee news. I have Keelan Cole 1 spot ahead of Mike Wallace right now. If Lee's out, he's going to be 5 spots ahead. If Lee is playing, he's going to be 15 spots behind. So it really just depends, and maybe we'll find out before then. I imagine that we will. They're both solid starts this week in the flex. I imagine you probably have 4 better wide receivers than either of these guys, but if you do need someone, they're both right there. It's just whichever one you want to trust, Blake Bortles or Joe Flacco this week. And, for what it's worth, I have Kendall Wright a few spots behind them. He's in the conversation too. Will Fuller's not for me, but those 4 wide receivers, Westbrook, Cole, Wallace, Kendall Wright, I think they're all startable this week. Maybe Eli Rogers too.
Kendall Wright worries me a little bit this week. I'm not nearly as high as I was last week on him because I do think the Bears at home, they're going to be able to hold this Browns offense in check. Therefore, they're going to be able to lean on their run game, and we may see Trubisky throw the ball like 20 times. That's a possibility with the Bears this week, which is why I have him down at number 6 among wide receivers. I think I would rather take my shot on Geronimo Allison, and I say that because Allison's a very talented player. Like if you're in a dynasty league and Allison is still on the waiver wire, he's a player to go and grab because you have Devontae Adams who's coming up on free agency. You have Jordy Nelson, who looks like he's towards the end of his career. Randall Cobb, they may opt out of his contract because he's very expensive, and they have somewhat of an out after this year. So there's all these sorts of possibilities that Geronimo Allison is a starting perimeter wide receiver for the Packers next year. So that's something to keep in mind. And so he's number 4. Damiere Byrd, again, on Carolina. He's with Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess was a bust this past week. He's okay. People thought he was injured. It turns out he's okay. Greg Olsen stole the show. That's basically what happened to Devin Funchess. But
and
Mike
I
Wallace,
sat him for Charles Clay like an idiot. Oh man, at least I had him in week 16. I did make the championship.
Charles Clay wasn't a bad play. Like I think Charles Clay, what did he have? 5 catches for 89 yards or something like that.
He didn't have 1,000 catches for 20,000 yards like Greg Olsen, though.
That's true. But no, Mike Wallace, again, I want to go back to Mike Wallace because I think D.D. Westbrook is the only one of the guys we'd mentioned that I would take over Mike Wallace. And I say that because Wallace, over the last 4 weeks, he's seen 11 targets, 8 targets, 5 targets, 10 targets. So he's being targeted an awful lot. He's producing on those targets. He's totaled at least 72 yards in each of the last 3 games. Jeremy Maclin hurt his knee. He's apparently not going to play this coming week on a short week. So these targets have to go somewhere. And again, I do love the running backs there. There's no question in my mind that Alex Collins turns out to be at least a top 20 running back this week, but I do think that they're going to have to throw at certain points of it, and Mike Wallace has clearly been the one that they trust. So him against Indianapolis, I do think he's in the wide receiver 3 conversation.
If next year's draft was tomorrow, Tags, are you taking Alex Collins in the first 3 rounds?
It depends on what team he's on, because I don't even know if he's going to be on the Ravens. He's slated to be an undrafted an unrestricted free agent. You have Kenneth Dixon, who is supposed to be coming back off suspension. He was supposed to be someone that was really good. He looked good in his minimal time, but again, he's been away from the game for a while now. So, I mean, if he's on the Ravens, no. I'm not trusting that backfield at all.
I'm worried that Kenneth Dixon is going to be next year's Kevin White for me because he is so talented, man. I'm really excited about Kenneth Dixon coming back, but I was really excited about Kevin White too. And maybe I shouldn't even mention that, but I was, it just sucks. He got hurt again. Like, is that going to happen to Kenneth Dixon? I don't know. They might want to keep Alex Collins around. Tags different. I'm having like a look squirrel moment right now, but you were talking about the Packers' future at wide receiver. I really would love to see. Have you seen Cortland Sutton from Southern Methodist play football? That guy is a baller, man.
Oh, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
Dude, he might drop till the second round. If the Packers wait, end of the first round, Cortland Sutton sitting there, Aaron Rodgers, man, would be licking his lips because that boy can play some football.
That's the issue, though, is I don't think he drops that far. Even if he does, I don't think the Packers jump. I think they have too many other holes in this team. That team is deprived of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Even the offense, the offensive line, they could bolster the offensive line a little bit, keep Aaron Rodgers a little more upright, a little less running for his life. So I just think that, I mean, is it a dream? For sure, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers needs a wide receiver like that in order to succeed. I think he makes his wide receivers, a lot of them, better than they are. So I think he could make do with a lot of talent that they have. So as much as it's a pipe dream, I don't think it happens.
Speaking of Aaron Rodgers receivers, Randall Cobb is available in 47% of leagues. Martavis Bryant sitting there with Antonio Brown out against Houston. He's available in 44% of leagues. Oh, man, I would love Martavis Bryant even over D.D. Westbrook this week.
I think I'm going to go Westbrook there, but it's close. It's close. The only reason I would say that is because Martavis Bryant is on the road, and it's not so much Martavis Bryant, but it's Ben Roethlisberger on the road. It's in a dome, so that does help things a little bit for me, but Ben Roethlisberger sucks on the road. Like, we've been through this.
Did you watch this game? He's like grabbing his hand every single play, like, oh man, I think my hand's broken. He's limping around. He pulled his hamstring, Big Ben, and he's out there. They're throwing all these touchdown passes to come back, and they really should have won that game because that rule is just garbage. Like, I understand it is the rule. Change the rule. It's stupid. It ruins football. Everyone knows the Steelers won that game, but Martavis Bryant, watching that game, he looked really good, Tags. He laid out for that ball. He's making sharp cuts. Him and Big Ben were on the same page. I think with Antonio Brown coming back, I would not be surprised at all if Martavis Bryant's a top 10 wide receiver next week. I'm not ranking him that way, but if I have him, I'm playing him.
I agree with you on that. I would play him. I also think that Juju Smith-Schuster is a must play. And if somebody dropped him because of the hamstring stuff and like they just have moved on from Juju, pick him up because they're both fantastic plays this week against Houston. That game is going to be on Monday night. And again, Antonio Brown's not playing in it. So you can plug those guys in. Houston is better against the run than people think. So Le'Veon Bell should have to do more through the air. But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy world we live in, man. Talking about some of these names that we're trusting in week 16 of the fantasy playoffs. D.D. Westbrook, Keelan Cole.
And like, no doubt about it, like, definitely trust them.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Martavis is one of those players. He's been disappointing, but it did seem like he got some of his mojo back this past week, and that's something that he kind of needed. I mean, even me, someone that was refusing to move on from Martavis, I finally did. I finally got over it and was just like, no, I'm not. I'm off this guy until he gives me a reason to trust him again. And I always felt like the Steelers needed to do something to get his confidence back. I felt like it was shot. I felt like he wanted off the team because they had no faith in him. They needed to do something to ignite his confidence, and his one-handed touchdown grab against Stephon Gilmore likely did that. So it's good to see him with some confidence back, and hopefully he can step up and be that number one receiver in the offense.
Tags, you mentioned Juju, and I can't let this pass. I saw a tweet last week that I thought was one of the top tweets I've seen all year. And I don't remember who it was that tweeted it out, but it was a picture of Juju standing over Vontaze Burfict. And while he was on the ground, and it said, "I know you took my bike, dude." And I just thought that was so funny, man. So funny.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to reference what Juju did. He tweeted something himself that he went into a local sports shop in Pittsburgh, and there was a woman buying a jersey. I think it was for her son or something. She had it on hold, and the people that worked there told Juju, they're like, "Hey, she's buying your jersey. She's gonna hold." He's like, "All right." So he walked over to her. She had no idea who he was. He puts the jersey on the ground. He starts signing his name on the number. She's like, "Oh wait, hey, what are you doing?" And he hands it over, and they're like, "Oh, this is Juju." And she's like, "Oh my God, like really?" So he just did like a nice friendly thing. He's like a kid.
He's the best, man.
He's a great immature at times for sure, but he seems like he's a good kid. And what he did to Burfict, was it uncalled for? Probably. I mean,
definitely.
I know Bobby's not against it because of the way Burfict has been in the past, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am against it, but it's more justified than completely reckless. Like, I don't really know how else to put it. Like, I don't know. I heard Antonio Brown in the locker room saying, that's karma, it's karma. And, he's kind of right. Like, you almost have to police yourself. If you're not going to suspend these guys for the season for trying to end your career, you got to take matters into your own hand as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that was the thing is like, someone recommended it that that the NFL starts suspending players who deliver the hit, like Thomas Davis, as long as Devontae Adams is out, like, of action, that he should be out of action too. Like, if you delivered that blow that gave that person like an illegal hit, if it's an illegal hit and you gave that player a concussion, then you should be out as long as that player is, that you should be forced to miss that time.
I like it. I like that rule. Tags a few more wide receivers that might be available for some people. Paul Richardson, 44% of leagues. Kenny Stills, 46% of leagues. Jeremy Maclin, 45%. No. Yeah, I'm not really interested in those guys, but Paul Richardson, I think that one makes sense against Dallas.
I agree. It's a rookie trio they have at cornerback in Dallas, and regardless of what you saw, on Sunday night, they're not a very good secondary. They're not a good defense at all. Like, I talked about that this offseason, is that I said that the Cowboys weren't going to be a playoff team, and I felt like they were going to be a team that finished under 500. Like, I just didn't feel like that they were a very good, well-rounded football team, and I still feel that way. Playing three rookie cornerbacks, I don't see any way that Russell Wilson doesn't go in there and completely dominate them. You don't have to worry about weather concerns, which you do with a lot of teams in week 16, because we're now in late December and there's going to be snow, there's going to be wind, there's going to be cold, a lot of stuff. But playing inside Dallas's dome, Russell Wilson, give me him, give me his pass catchers. Let's make some money.
Yeah. Tags, you talked about some of these high upside wide receivers. Corey Coleman's someone on my radar. Like, I'm not going to recommend him as a top 36 wide receiver, but there's definitely a chance he could be a top 15, top 20 wide receiver. He can get you, 5, 6, 7 catches, 60, 80 yards, and a touchdown. That's what we're looking for. I mean, there's a chance he busts and gives you 2 points like last week, but, that was against Baltimore. This is against Chicago, which is a better matchup. Not that much better, but there's a chance he has a big game. Anyone else you like?
It's kind of maddening actually that Corey Coleman has gone to they've went away from him, and this comes from someone who likes seeing Josh Gordon targeted. I'm not going to sit here and complain about that, but what I am going to complain about is that Corey Coleman has 13 targets over the last 3 weeks, while Isaiah Crowell has 9. Like, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, and they're throwing to their backup tight end like 80 times. You have 2 of the most talented wide receivers in football. Throw them the ball. Like, unless you were told, go out there and go 0-16 so you can get the first-round pick and lose your job to a new quarterback, like, I don't see any reason you don't just throw the ball to Corey Coleman and Josh Gordon 30 times in a game. Makes me mad.
Yeah,
man.
Get David Njoku a little bit more involved. He's a rookie tight end, but I mean, there's so many things wrong with the Browns that we don't have time to get into it on the show. But Corey Coleman is definitely someone interesting. As the week goes on, the start-sit show, those will be the players that I'll be able to, once I dive into everything and kind of find those sleepers for you, because I am going to find them. Because the thing is like talking about the waiver wire, all it is week 16 rankings. And my rankings process goes into Wednesday, sometimes early Thursday morning. And then obviously I'll tweak from there as we hear more and more news. So on the start sit show that we'll have on Wednesday, definitely pay attention to that, because I should have some other deep sleepers for you guys.
Tags, let's go tight end here. A lot of people are going to be talking about Ricky Seals-Jones. He has another good matchup. Ricky Seals-Jones is playing like barely at all. You cannot play him in your fantasy championship. Benjamin Watson, yeah, he had the big game, but it was one big reception. It was against the worst defense in football against tight ends. So as far as I'm concerned, Tags, there's only a couple tight ends you can consider here. Charles Clay at New England, Eric Ebron at Cincinnati, available in 57% of leagues. And then Jesse James, he's available in 76% of leagues. And with Vance McDonald out, they've been using him a lot, and he looks pretty good too.
Yeah, with Antonio Brown out, you have to wonder how they're going to look. Against Houston, it's not like a bad matchup, but Eric Ebron, you mentioned him. He's the number one target, I think, for me. He's someone who's been relatively consistent and at a very volatile position. You're just looking for some consistency. And shockingly enough, Eric Ebron has showed consistency over the last, 8 weeks. Ever since the trade deadline, he's been a different player. They've been using him more and more, and you continue to see that. He had a 10-catch game the other week. So yeah, Ricky Seals-Jones, definitely not. Drop him if you own him. The Cardinals announced earlier today that they're going away from Blaine Gabbert. They're going to start Drew Stanton in week 16, which means that the Gabbert Seals-Jones connection is no longer with us.
Yeah.
And even honestly, even over the last couple weeks, he's been really bad. He played more snaps this week with Jermaine Gresham out. He saw 6 targets. He caught just 2 of them for 11 yards. So it wasn't a great showing by him. The hype has died down on him quite a bit. So I would rather own someone like Garrett Selleck than Ricky Seals-Jones.
I would too, and I do not want to own Garrett Selleck, so that should tell you everything you want to know. The thing about Eric Ebron is he's been this player. Like last year, he was one of the most consistent tight ends, not on the same level as Delaney Walker, but super consistent, and he hates playing in Detroit. You can just hear it when he gives these interviews after the game, like, man, these folks are never going to be happy with what I do. I go out there and I catch 10 balls for 94 yards, and they're mad I don't get 2 touchdowns. Like, give the man a break. If you watch Eric Ebron play, he's going to leave in free agency. He's going to go to some random team, and he's going to be a really good tight end for 5 to 8 years. I guarantee it. He's good, man.
I talked about him this offseason. He was a player that I was interested in buying. I felt like we were still a year away considering his age, because he's only 24 years old. And when I've gone through historical data, what we've found is that 25 and up, that's when tight ends, outside of Rob Gronkowski, tight ends don't break out before the age of 25. So Eric Ebron I still felt like it was a year away, but I also felt like there were signs that they were going to use him more in the offense. It didn't really happen to start the year. People dropped him, understandably so, but he's totaled at least 35 yards now in 8 straight games. Like I understand that's not like a large number, but that's an accomplishment for a tight end. That's giving you a fantasy floor. And on top of that, if he starts scoring some touchdowns, that's been the knock. Even those in the fantasy community who said Eric Ebron can't score touchdowns. I think that's BS, personally. I know in year 1, he didn't catch many touchdowns. He was a rookie. he caught 5 touchdowns on 70 targets in his second season. So he was able to catch touchdowns every 12 targets. That's a good ratio to have. And then last year he didn't. So it's just like this up and down thing. He's a young tight end. Like, what did we really expect? I think he has a high floor. I think that's been the case all along. If you're in a dynasty league, I'm with you. I think that he's going to be one of the better tight ends in football over the next 10 years. I just think that he's a year or two away where he's actually going to break out. Matthew Stafford, I don't know what happens with Marvin Jones. I don't know what happens with Golden Tate. There's so many things that moving parts, but I do think that Eric Ebron stays in Detroit. I think they made it a point during free agency that they said that during the trade deadline, they received offers for Eric Ebron, but they said they're going to keep him, which tells me they do want to extend his contract. They do want to keep him around longer, and they don't have another plan at tight end. So I do think he stays with them, but I'm with you in the fact that I think Eric Ebron's he's a very talented individual.
Tags, we've got some time here, and I do want to talk about defense special teams. We don't usually do it on this show, but it's so important for this week. Like, most people listening to this show, probably 50, 60% of them are going to pick up a defense special teams this week. It might be their only pickup, so I think we do need to talk about it. There's 5 standout defenses. They're owned in virtually every league. It's Baltimore face Indianapolis, New England against Buffalo, Jacksonville against San Francisco, the Chargers against the Jets, and then Pittsburgh against Houston, obviously. Behind them, I think the next 4 best defenses are available in most leagues. So I want to know who you're picking up if you need one, Tags. Is it Washington face Denver? Is it Arizona against Eli Manning and the Giants? Chicago against Cleveland is my choice. And then the other one out there, and I know this one's a little risky, but it's really interesting with Drew Stanton coming in, is the Giants at Arizona. Do you like them, or is it one of the other 3 I mentioned?
No, I'm definitely on the Bears. Anytime you have a chance to pick up a defense that's going against the Browns, you do it. The Bears have been a better team at home under John Fox. They've played really well there for whatever reason. Their defense has been better than people expected. Deshaun Kaiser just looks so bad. There's been now 13 turnovers over the last 6 games. He's being sacked. I think it's like 3 times per game. There's really no reason not to like the Bears defense. It's going to be, I want to say, around 28 degrees on Sunday, so it's not going to be ideal playing conditions for the Bears, for offenses in general, playing in that cold weather. So Kyle Fuller has been playing better. He should be able to at least keep Josh Gordon somewhat in check. So yeah, the Bears are definitely the one. But Bobby, I wanted to go back to tight end really quick, because I wanted to mention a name that if you're one that streams tight ends, and let's say that you don't get your intended target, you don't have someone, keep an eye on Adam Shaheen this week in his practice reports. Because if Adam Shaheen does practice this week and he's going to play on Sunday, Adam Shaheen is very, very interesting. And I say that because the Cleveland Browns are continually bad. Like I don't know how else to put this. They're a team that you could play almost any tight end against and expect top 15 wide tight end results. 12 of 14 tight ends this year have finished top 15 against them.
I mean, Ben Watson had a horrible season, and then all of a sudden last week he explodes.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying is, like, he was someone that I was considering in cash. Him and Charles Clay last week, I was considering in my DFS cash game lineups. I ultimately went with Clay because I was like, man, Watson's been so bad. But even he went off against the Browns. It's like Adam Shaheen has looked really good. He's only seen 14 targets this year, but he saw a season-high 5 targets in week 14 before missing week 15. He's caught 3 touchdowns on 14 targets this year. They called him Baby Gronk coming out. Like, he's a guy that's massive. He's got these massive mitts for hands. He's known as a receiver. Mitch Trubisky has started to trust him a little more. Yeah, he is. And that's the thing, is he's a name to pay attention to. Like, if you're in a league where a lot of people stream tight ends, if you're looking for someone that's available, I think Adam Shaheen is someone that I would consider if he practices this week. I do want to see him practice, though.
I've got him number 18 if he plays. In Dynasty Leagues, I love Shaheen. I wrote up about him before the draft saying this guy's going to be underrated. He's going to be drafted in like the 4th round. And he was reached for a little bit because he's got so much ability. But really, I mean, I love O.J. Howard as an NFL player. In terms of fantasy, though, I think Shaheen is going to have a better career.
I felt that way about David Njoku. I feel like Howard was the most well-rounded tight end, but I felt like Njoku was the one who's going to like eventually become like a stud tight end. And I do like Shaheen. I do feel like OJ Howard's going to be good too. This is the future of tight end. Like, these guys are just monsters. They're crazy athletes. You're just not supposed to be able to move the way that they do, especially Njoku, when you're as big as they are. Like, it's just unfair.
I want to go back to defense really quick, just because I think people might need a little more convincing about the Chicago defense. Like, if I had D.D. Westbrook and Chicago available, I would pick up Chicago first because I think their matchup is so great against the Browns. And there's other wide receivers you can pick up there, like we talked about, Keelan Cole, Mike Wallace, all kinds of other guys. There's other defenses too, but I think Chicago's that much better than everyone else. They've got multiple sacks in every single game this year except one against the Eagles. They've got 39 sacks, okay? Over the last 3 weeks, they've given up just 42 points. They've got 9 sacks in that time. They forced 4 turnovers. They've only given up more than 24 points twice all season. This is a good defense, Tags. They're top 12 in fantasy so far this year, and they get the Browns. So, they're a top 5 defense this year, right? This week.
Well, and you missed it, too. So, you said it. They've only allowed 24 or more points twice this year, or more than 24 points twice this year. Both times were on the road, and they were against Carson Wentz and Aaron Rodgers. So, let's really not blame them for that. So, yeah, the Bears defense, they have been a lot better than people think. At home, they have not allowed more than 23 points at home all season. So, again, I'm with you there 100%. I think that the Bears are definitely my number one streaming defense that's available in every league.
Yeah, number 2, if you can't get the Bears, I think is Washington against Brock Osweiler. So Washington gets a lot of sacks too. Denver's offensive line, not very good. So that's a decent option too.
I would probably go with the Giants against Drew Stanton over them, but Washington's a good number 3 option. But yeah, against Drew Stanton, you want to start any quarterback, any defense that you can too. That's one of those must-target matchups.
Yeah. All right, Tags. Well, that's all for today's show. Everyone, good luck in your championship matchups. Hit us up on Twitter if you want questions. We want to help you win your championship at Mike Tagliere NFL and at Bobby Fantasy Pro. Also, thanks to the sponsors of today's show, LisaMattress.com. Go to Lisa.com, that's LEESA.com/fantasypros for $100 off your mattress order. And thanks also to SeatGeek. Download their app and you can get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase using the promo code FantasyPros. That's promo code FantasyPros, all one word, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.